joining in, and hopefully they won't miss any of the content if they're coming in a little bit late today. So I know sometimes with these webinars, you got to be able to download um, the app for your computer, so sometimes it takes a little longer than people expected. Again, I'd like to welcome everybody. So you're here today for what I call kind of the Microsoft BI stack, or what's right for me in my business. And so I'm going to start off, give you guys a little introduction of myself, and then talk a little bit about really kind of what we are going to discuss today, what pieces we're going to demonstrate today, and then we'll get started. Little bit of house cleaning before we get started. We are monitoring the chat window. So if at any time you do have a question, sometimes if you unmute yourself, there's a lot of background noise and it gets a little loud. So I would ask just to use the chat window to ask a question. Again, that's being monitored. So as soon as that question comes up, when we see that it's a good stopping point, we would for sure answer those questions. I also do have time planned on at the end of this presentation to answer questions too that you might have. Okay, so a quick little outline of what we're going to be talking about is the first thing I'm going to do is I'm kind of introduce who I am. And that's going to be an important topic as we go through this today, because what I'm trying to help you guys understand is when we look at a BI stack and we look at reporting, Power BI reporting services, look at analysis services, one of the key things that we're going to focus on today is trying to find out who you are. Because that is going to play a big role in what you should be looking at and how you should be utilizing the Microsoft stack and producing some type of business intelligence and reporting. So kind of a key topic of today, as I was developing this, that was one of the things that kind of came out of that, is be able to ask that question to yourself, is who are you? And that's a big question to ask, but from a reporting standpoint and from a business analysis and a business intelligence standpoint, what is your job role? What are you trying to accomplish? That's going to help you really to make some decisions on what technologies are out there and what technologies you should be doing. So I'm going to start. So I kind of put up a little information about myself, and I'll talk a little bit about Tandem here too. And because I'm kind of going on that theme of who I am, I've got my little name tag up there. So for those who don't know me, my name is John Ecken. I am one of the owners and really head instructor, kind of key to technology for Tandem Solution. Now, let me give you a quick background of Tandem and what we can do for you, and hopefully after this presentation, maybe you'll have some needs that we can help you with. Tandem is primarily a training company. I used to always say IT training company, but really we're a training company, and we're here to provide customized solutions for your training needs. And this business intelligence is a great example where you can take standard classes and you'll get what you need out of it, but what we do, and we do well, is we really come in and help you understand what your needs are, and we help build and tailor a class around those needs. So we do have the standard classes. Sometimes that is what your need is. So sometimes you need just a standard, 5-day Microsoft class, or a 5-day Cisco class, or PMP class, IDLE training, and we have those available. We have hundreds available on our website. But we also like to get the opportunity to come in and talk to you and say, hey, if that isn't what you need, if that doesn't fit your needs, let us design something for you. Let us build a class around your needs. Maybe it's a Power BI class and a reporting service class that's blended together. That's what we do, and we do it well. We've been in business for a long time now, over like 13, 14 years. And outside of that, the owners have been in training for 20 plus years. So we can definitely help you out. Me, myself, I'm a technologist guy. So I've been working with data since I was essentially a small kid. I've been a Microsoft certified trainer for over 16, 17 years now. Have a lot of Microsoft certifications, have certifications in other technologies outside of Microsoft also. So I'm coming from you as someone that can deliver information from a Microsoft standpoint, but also someone that can really kind of come in and deliver this information to you from what's going on out in the industry. So I deal with a lot of clients, and I'm able to really extend that information to you, and hopefully you're going to walk away today with a better understanding of what's available to you, but also why you might make one decision or another. All right, so we'll get started quickly here. Just talk about what BI is and give you a little background of where this presentation kind of was came from. So business intelligence is a huge topic right now. You're also hearing the word big data thrown around a lot, and there's a lot going on in the idea of analytics. And so what we're trying to really figure out as a business is that I've got all this data, okay, this data that's been around forever, and how can I start to utilize that data to be effective? How can I use that data to make good decisions to really drive and empower my business to be better? And when I say better, it could be from how do I increase sales, how do I increase customers, or how do I increase quality? You know, if I've got a plant that I'm producing widgets at, and I'm able to take that data now. We hear the Internet of Things that comes around, and we say, oh, you know, everything's producing data. Well, how useful is that data? You know, if I know that my machine is running at an efficient rate and then there's a hiccup, what can I do with that data to try to determine what caused that hiccup? What can I do with that data to make my machine even more efficient? So it's always just about increasing sales or getting more customers. It's also about quality. And we have so much data available to us that we should be able to start to use that and analyze that data and get some good results out of it. Now, that kind of led me to this topic. Short story on that is, but I've worked with about 3 different customers here in the last month and a half, and you know, they all came to me and said, hey, we need to learn Power BI. That's one of the things we're going to talk about today is, you know, what is Power BI and what's Power BI good for? And upon having conversations with these customers, we also realized that it's real confusing right now. You know, Microsoft is throwing all these new technologies out there, and they're using that BI, business intelligence kind of keyword wrapping around those technologies, and they're throwing the cloud in, and they're throwing big data in. And I'm starting to realize that a lot of customers are they're realizing the need for this, but they're also not 100% sure what they need. And there's all these tool sets, and a lot of them cross each other up. You know, when I look at things like Power BI reporting services in Excel, there's a lot of cross-up that both of them or all 3 of them can produce some of the same results. And so I'm seeing that in companies a lot that says, okay, I know I need something. What is it that I need? And so that kind of was the driver for this presentation for everybody today is maybe I can help clarify what some of those needs are and how to make a decision. I think ultimately you're going to find is you might need them all. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about why each tool has a really specific purpose and why having all those tools in your organization will probably lead to a better BI platform and more actual analytics that you're going to be able to use and drive out of your BI or your business data. Now, what we always hope is that BI and business analytics is that crystal ball. And of course, I show my little dollar sign in there because unfortunately we're in business and business are there to produce revenue. But really, you're never going to have that magic ball. Okay, I've worked with a lot of companies, and really what comes out of the BI and the analytic world is sometimes is findings that they didn't recognize or didn't understand. A lot of times it's also just confirmation. It's, you know what, I feel like we have a problem here, or I feel like this particular marketing campaign works well and this one doesn't. And we're just confirming that. We're looking at data and doing that confirmation. But there are times that does enlighten us and does bring out information that we go, oh, I didn't realize that before. I didn't understand that there was that trend that occurred. But what we're trying to do out of BI is really look at those trends. You know, if I'm looking at product quality, I'm going to try to look at BI and see if I can figure out the trends of when we have failures. I used to do a lot of work with a heavy machinery company, and we used to talk a lot about what we call B5 lives. And the B5 life was that 5% of a particular component will fail at this particular level. And that could have been usage hours, that could have been mileage or anything like that. And so we were trying to help determine if that B5 life was accurate. And what the company was trying to do is say, you know what, if we can get a good analytics on where that failure really does occur, whether it really is at this particular point, at 1,000 hours or whatever it was, they could be proactive. They can go to those companies and say, hey, you're getting close to 1,000 hours. We can show you a large list of failures that occur at that point. Let's service this. And so when we look at business analytics, again, it's not always about that crystal ball and trying to predict the future. It is trying to see trends in our data, trying to see trends in our quality, trends in our sales, trends in our marketing efforts, so that we can turn around and make decisions that make sense for our companies. So I wish it was the crystal ball like everybody else. It'd be nice to be able to predict the future, but at least with business analytics, we can try to get the best information that we have and make good decisions. Okay, so why is it confusing? When we look at our business analytics, our BI and business intelligence, right now there are so many products on the market that work with this. Okay, when we get into things like big data, we have things called Hadoop, and we have Pig and Hive, and we have all these keywords out there that we're hearing, and it's like, where do we go? We have Tableau, we have business objects, and you have Microsoft stepping in with this whole big BI stack, and they have their machine learning environment up in the cloud, and it's, so why is it confusing? It's so confusing because there's no real good roadmap right now. And for a lot of organizations, it's, okay, what do I do? There are so many open source products that I can choose from. There are products that are very costly. And, so there's a lot of decisions that you have to make, okay? And for every product, there's a second product that you can choose from. For probably every open source product, there's a for paid product that we can choose from. And then, of course, you go into the mix of, well, it's open source, but how much am I going to pay to implement it? That might be double the price that I'm going to pay to implement a product that I'm purchasing. So it's really difficult. It's really kind of hard to kind of find that right path, and what fits in your organization. The other thing that is real confusing about BI right now is that, I think a lot of individuals recognize that BI is important, but we're still not always seeing that return on investment yet, and we're still not sure why we need it, and so it's hard maybe even to get the buy-in from other people or from management to say, yeah, we need to move forward with the BI solution. So it is confusing. There's a lot being thrown at everybody. I think IT in general is kind of confusing now when we start throwing the cloud in, and I know the cloud's been around for a few years now, but it's starting to all blend together, and it's really difficult to kind of choose that path. Another component that makes this all confusing is, where's your data nowadays? When we talk about data, and I should have thrown up an Internet of Things here too, we've got data all over the place. And when I'm looking at analytics, the big key to that is, how do I get that data from all these sources and bring it into some environment that makes sense? I've got my local databases, I've got cloud databases, I've got software as services, if I'm using things like Salesforce, or if I'm using email marketing tools, or any type of service-based Office 365. Social media is a huge component. Are we posting things on Twitter? Do we have Facebook posts? Are we using LinkedIn? Are we using something else out there, Snapchat or whatever's out there and available? There's so many nowadays. But if I'm looking at marketing campaigns and I'm using social media as a method to get a word out about my product, then I need to understand that data. I need to be able to grasp and get that data. So, to add to that confusion of there's so many products out there, we also add to that confusion that, wow, my data lives all over the place. And that's going to make a big factor when we start to decide what different products we should use. Some products are better at working with your local databases or your cloud databases, where other products are much more better at hitting these services, hitting social media. So, some of that is when you kind of are deciding who you are, you also need to decide where your data is and how we can go and grab that data more effectively. Okay. And so then comes Microsoft to the rescue, right? And I put a bunch of question marks there because I'm a big advocate of Microsoft and I'm a big fan of what they're doing in BI right now, but I'm not sure that they still have made it clear. And they do have a roadmap out, and that'll be something that we'll send out today after this webinar, but it still maybe isn't really clear to everybody. How do I use these Microsoft platforms? So that's what I'm hoping to do here today, is to kind of give you an idea of what each of those platforms is and why and what some of the best usages are for those actual platforms. All right, so let's start talking a little bit about Microsoft's BI stack. And I'm going to throw out a bunch of keywords here. I'm going to talk about kind of where things sit, and then we're going to break down some of these individual components, okay? When we look at a BI stack from Microsoft, you can see right in the middle of the page is kind of our database. And really, I kind of consider that our data. Microsoft SQL Server has been around for a long time now, has been implemented in thousands and thousands of companies, and some companies have thousands and thousands of databases or SQL servers themselves, and it really kind of is the focus of kind of that stack, because we do have to get our data, we do have to bring our data in even from multiple sources, and kind of sits in the middle of that. Now that's where everything kind of goes to the side. When we see and we look at Microsoft, we have analysis services that we're going to talk about, and we have our cubes and we have our tabular models that we now have available to us, and that takes our data and puts it into a format that allows us quicker access and allows us to pre-aggregate information. And so there's a lot there that we can utilize and see from that data. And then we throw in reporting services. So we now got the way to visualize our data and see our data, but then right on top of that, Microsoft puts Power BI in, and we go, ooh, what does that do for us? And what's the difference between those two? And then they throw the cloud in and they say, hey, we also have machine learning capabilities up in the cloud, or if you're using the Power BI service, we have insights. You can throw your data up there and tell it to, hey, do quick insights, and it will go in and try to look at your data and try to come back with actual information about your data that you might not have recognized or seen. So, while Microsoft does a great job, they give us all these tools, and it's almost growing every day. When we get into Power BI and start to look at that tool's changing monthly. Every time I go and update it monthly, I'm like, oh, that's a really cool feature that I've been waiting for. And so, to add to that confusion, the tools that we're using are constantly changing also. So it kind of leads to that initial question that I asked in the beginning here is, who are you? When you're looking at these tools, each of Microsoft's tools that are going to be available in their BI stack are primarily focused for a typical or a kind of a unique personality. And that's going to really help you decide, well, which tools do I need is based on what am I trying to accomplish, okay? And there's going to be a lot of cross-up too, okay? So don't think that one tool is only for a certain person and then the other tool has to be for a different person. But as you're looking at who you are and trying to make that decision of where you fit into the BI world, that will help us kind of to incorporate what tools out there you might be interested in, or what tools will best fit you. So I've got this broken down into 3 categories. First 2 are here on this page. We'll go to another slide for the last one. The first 2, though, are where probably most people are going to fit. One is for our self-service BI. So this is where we really are going to look at individuals. Primarily, these might not be IT or developers at all. I would call these kind of our data analysts or our power users. And these are the individuals that work with the data. These are the individuals, managers, plant operation staff that are, they're involved with the data, and they know the data is coming out, and they want to be able to get this data. They want to be able to drill down. They want to understand the data. They want to see root cause analysis. They want to, and really work with the data. And the great thing about self-service BI is the fact that these people know the data. As an IT and a developer, if someone asked me to pull a bunch of data from a widget making machine and look for the anomalies of that machine, I might or might not be able to do that. It might take a while. It might take a lot of data mining of that to make that happen. I tell you what, these people, these self-service BI type people, are typically the ones that can almost look at the data, and before they even get all the data, they can start to see patterns. They go, hey, that machine shouldn't be running at 95 degrees. It's supposed to be running normally at 85 degrees, and they're picking that stuff out quickly. And so that's why we want to give some of these tools to these people, is because why do I want to go through a month process of saying, okay, you're going to go sit down and talk to the report writer, and you're going to explain your needs, and the report writer is going to go write that report, and then they're going to come back to you and show you that report. And then you're going to tear it apart and go, no, that's not exactly what I wanted. Go back here, fix this. And they're going to do that again. And next thing you know, to get this simple report that you're looking at, we're 2-3 months down the road. So with self-service BI, it's more, hey, give me the tools, point me to my data, and let me go. And so we're going to look at what are the better tools for that self-servicing process. Then we can take that back a step, and we look at corporate BI. This is probably where we're starting to dig more into an IT environment. So in IT, we're looking at things that I might need reports that are broadly across my teams. I might even have reports that are going to be shared to the public. These are reports that are going to be ran all the time. They're going to be our typical dashboards, our scorecards, our display monitors in our plants. And so this is more that corporate side. This is more of the, hey, this is very visual facing, and these are long-term reports that we're going to need. And those might take those 2 months, 1 month, it kind of depends on the type of report. But we're okay with that because we're going to get it right, because it's something that's going to be used for a long term. Whereas that self-service stuff, that might be used for one meeting. I might go in and look for gap analysis, and I need that for one meeting, and after that meeting's over, I might need a different report the next time. And then we go one more level deep, and really it's kind of the advanced analytics, or you're starting to hear the word now called data scientist. And these individuals are really the ones that are going in and doing advanced data. They're looking at patterns. They are mining our data. They're taking that data and doing the heavy forecasting. And these people, I would always picture them as that typical data scientist, but they're sitting there with their heavy glasses on, and they're just, that's all they do. They live in data day in and day out, and they're trying to make that amazing discovery. Okay, we've got tools for them too. And that's kind of the neat thing about Microsoft Stack, is that I can hit all 3 levels. I can go to that self-service individual, I can hit that corporate level, and if I need to, I can get all the way down into this advanced analytics and really make it unique for them. Okay, so let's take a look at these levels and start to look at these tools. And I promise I'm not going to talk and show, I am going to show some of these tools and why they're important to you. Okay, so we're going to start with self-service BI. One of the big keys is, if you're looking at self-service BI, a couple of the primary tools that you're going to be utilizing, one would be Excel. Okay, I was working with a client yesterday, and I really focused on that quite a bit. Said, hey, don't discount Excel as being a reporting tool. There are a lot of things that Excel does and does well, and it's definitely a very good reporting tool that we're going to be able to utilize. Some of that it has to do with some of our power components that are in there. We have things like Power Pivot, Power View. Depending on your version of Excel, you'll have Power Query in there. We have 3D maps. You know, if you guys have never seen that, it doesn't work real great in a webinar, but you know, 3D maps is a great utility. It allows me to produce actual 3D visuals on top of you know, a globe, and I can look at cells and I can look at trends and patterns of cells on top of this data and this geo information. We have our data mining tools that we can add in. So from a self-service side, that's one of the products you're going to be looking at is Excel. You know, and how can I go in and get data from Excel, and how can I use that into Power, into pivot tables and things like that. And then we drop that to really kind of that next level would be the use of Power BI. And really, the nice thing about Excel and Power BI is one is they do work together with each other. And so if I did create something in Excel and I needed it to be a little bit more robust, I would have the ability to move some of that data into Power BI. And then for Power BI, the big key is, do I want to use the cloud service? Because with that cloud service, now I've got the apps for the mobile devices that I can do. I've got Q&A options that I can choose from. I've got quick insight analytics that I can work with. If the cloud service isn't an option for some reason, of course, I got just Power BI Desktop, and I can definitely use that as a good kind of gap between the cloud and everything else that I'm working in. And in SQL 2016 in reporting services, we'll show you that here in a second, I can host both of these in reporting services now. So in the past, reporting services were just mainly focused on Microsoft's report writing, report builder tool. But now reporting services has become much more of a repository for information, and even with these self-service tools, I'm going to be able to kind of place them into reporting services where other people will get access to them. Now, let's talk about what these do well and what these don't do so well. What I like about both these tools is they gather data very easily. So for a non-developer, a non-SQL writer, both of these tools are going to give you the capabilities to quickly gather data. So let's take a quick look at that in Excel and how that would work. So I'm going to open up a new Excel workbook here. So I am using Excel 2016, and immediately I'm going to see my data tab. And so if I really need the quick reports, I can go right to my data tab. I can go in and say, okay, I want to get external data. And you'll see there's tons of sources here, and there's a couple different ways. I can also say I want to do a new query, and then again I have tons of options, and that's really one of the main benefits that you're going to see from Excel and Power BI over something like reporting services is I've got the ability to grab and pull data from almost anywhere. Okay, so when you're making this decision, what do I need to use? Well, if you do need to get data from Facebook, if you are using Salesforce and you need to grab data from Salesforce, that's where Excel and Power BI are going to be your tool. Okay, so when I get into reporting services, I don't have that increased functionality that I do in Excel, both in Excel and Power BI. So, you know, from this standpoint, again, you don't even need to be a query writer. I can go into Excel, and I'm going to go ahead and connect to a SQL database. So even internally, I might have a SQL database that I want to use. And this is always the hardest part of this is knowing where and how to connect to your data. And that's something that, you know, as you implement self-service BI in your organization, you're going to have to help people with that. There's going to have to be some communication of saying, okay, if you do want to get to your data, this is how you go. This is your server name, this is the database name. Potentially, here's the tables, maybe some views that you could choose from to look at. But the key about all these products is really the fact that I don't need to know SQL. Okay, so if I want to do a, I want to look at a quick sales information, I can go ahead and grab my sales order data. I can come back in and hit edit, and I can quickly go in without writing any SQL. I can go in and really define what it is I want this data to look like. So I can remove columns, and I'm not going to go in through everything that we can do today because the purpose of this is to really just talk about what tools are out there and what they can be used for. But I don't need SQL to do this. Okay, I can easily create this. I can hit close and load, and I can now pull my data right into my report, and then I can move on from there. I can go in and start writing additional reports. I can go in, and maybe I want to look at POs and I want to use pivot tables. So I can come in and say, okay, summarize that in a pivot table, and immediately I've got a fairly robust platform that I'm using right here in Excel. So again, I always tell people, don't think of Excel as just a workbook. It is a reporting tool. It is something that is very useful for self-service reporting, especially, that we can use and really generate a lot of data and get a lot of analytics out of it. Now, to take that to that next level is really where you're probably, though, going to be looking at something like Power BI. Okay, with Power BI, I take Excel up a notch, and that's where I'm going to get really more of those really nice graphic reports. Okay, now very similar to Power BI, I get my data the same way. So just like we saw in Excel, in Power BI, I have all these nice data sources that I can choose from. Actually, there's probably even a few in Power BI that aren't available in Excel yet. When I load and when I connect to my data, same thing occurs. I don't have to have experience in writing SQL language. I can just connect to my data and I can model my data in a way that makes sense for me. The advantage that I get with Power BI here really is the fact that I can build quick interactive reports that are meaningful to people. Okay, what you probably aren't going to see in Power BI, and this is where I would kind of talk to people a lot about the limitations of it, is the fact that if I need really a lot of data, and I want a lot of what I would call tabular data, paginated data, long reports, that's really not what Power BI is useful for. Power BI is going to be that tool for self-service where I want to see a lot of graphical information and I want to be able to quickly go in, select different slicers, and see the results of my data. And we can see a couple things here. If we look at Power BI from a standpoint of kind of using AdventureWorks, Bicycles, Microsoft's one of their kind of demo companies. But from a Power BI standpoint, let's get that to pull up here. Kill my presentation for a second. There we go. I'm going to load here a sales map real quick, and we can see this is the type of information that I am visioning with Power BI. If I'm looking at bicycle sales and I want to focus in on mountain bike sales across the United States, I want to see visualization of where do we sell the most mountain bikes. Okay, so we did 36 million in mountain bike sales, and I look at California, and California is almost 5 million of that. I go up in here to Washington. Washington's almost 3.6 million. And I say, okay, well, that's great for mountain bikes, but what effect does that have on road bikes? And so I go ahead and select road bikes here. I'll try to select that. and we start to see the difference. Okay, so I did 43 million in road bikes, and again, Washington now fell a little bit at the orange color is kind of in the middle. California is still big. It's where we're primarily located in this particular fictional company. And I can start to see trends. But what I do see is that, hey, I've got a large part of the middle section of the United States I'm not selling anything to. Am I selling any touring bikes there? Well, Montana I am. But mountain bikes and stuff like that, I'm kind of missing this piece. So, that's the type of analytics that we can look at in Power BI quickly to say, hey, where is my focus of my sales? Where is the focus of anything that I can put in data into? My gap analysis before. So all that really is a key component to being successful in our Power BI solution. But again, while the numbers make sense, a lot of people with Power BI, you're looking at those reports that are that visual indication. When I look at this, I can visually see, as long as I knew and I could have put a key down there, kind of knew what the colors went for, but I can visually see California stands out. And then that's a nice piece of information that I need when I look at marketing or I look at expenses or anything in between. So that's what our Power BI does for us. Now, we throw that up into the web, and then, like I said, the nice thing about Power BI, and this is where it takes that step over Excel. So if you're kind of balancing, okay, should I be using Power BI, you'd be using Excel, really here you can look at your web application and say, okay, if I decide to use the web, then I've got the ability to host my Power BI solutions up there. Now, I actually can host some Excel up here too, so we're starting to see, again, that hybrid approach that Microsoft's allowing us to work with. The nice thing about all this is, again, the same interaction that I got on my desktop, I'm also going to get in my web applications. So as I'm selecting different promotions here, I'm seeing the data change in my web applications. I also have the ability to look at insights. So if I go in and I do quick insights, once it's up in the web, it's actually going to mine my data for me. So this uses parts of Microsoft's machine learning, and it's going to go out and really determine if there's anything that can be valued or looked at from our data that we might not have recognized. Now, again, this is a very small piece of data, so we're going to have some limited insights that are available, but if I click View Insights here, actually it gave me quite a few back, even though, so there's the insights that it determined for me. So it looked at things, we had more data loaded than I thought on this one, but it's talking about average weight versus unit cost. It's talking about, there's a lot on weight, sales amount versus average unit price. So, there's a lot of insight. Some of these you've got to look at and go, okay, I'm not sure if that makes sense for my organization, but I can definitely take a look at these and kind of see where we're at. Sales amount versus discounted amount. So where do our sales drive? Where are our outliers? So this will be a case where average total cost and weight, and this particular thing right here is an outlier, and I can click on that and actually see the information and kind of say, why is that such an outlier of all my other data? And so that's really nice for these, what they call quick insights, that we can utilize up in Power BI solutions. Okay, so again, if you're looking at who are you at that self-service level, again, Excel, Power BI website, those are really going to be those primary tools that you're probably going to want to look at. And you're going to choose those and utilize those as much as possible. If you're more of that corporate, this is where analysis services and reporting services come in. And still kind of throw Power BI out there. There's going to be a lot of corporations and a lot of corporate reports that Power BI and dashboards really make sense for also. So that's, again, that blending. You might get away from Excel some. I don't know at the corporate level if you're going to be producing a ton of Excel spreadsheets. I think you'll be looking at both of these analysis services and reporting services products. Take a quick look at those. Analysis services is our analytics package that we get with Microsoft. And the one thing that I want to really focus on for just a little bit on analysis services is the fact that they introduced what they call tabular models here in the last couple versions of SQL. And originally, analysis services was all about cubing. It was all about building dimensions, building these massive cubes. And again, if you're not familiar with that process, it reminds you of a Rubik's Cube where you're flipping through it and it's changing the data every time you make a turn on that Rubik's Cube. And it was great. It was high speed. It allowed data mining capabilities, but it was actually, I don't know if confusing is the right word, but it was really hard to implement. So in recent years, Power and analysis services really have started to shift over to what we call a tabular model. And I'll show you an example that a tabular model in analysis services allows me to connect to data, and then I'm able to go in and clean up that data and better define that data. So like, for example, in a normalized database, you might never have a line total field. So this is a sales header information. We have quantity and we have price. So I don't necessarily need to know what the line total is because I can calculate that in the SQL language. Well, with things like tabular models, because line total is probably what my analytics are going to be using a lot on, I'm able to actually go into this and create a new field that calculates line total for me. So, and I can go into these columns, and if I can take, let's say I want to look at, so that's line total, and maybe I want to see, let's see, line total. Gotta start with my equal sign here. And I want to see line total minus unit price discount. So that would be, so I'll say unit price discount. And so, there's a new column that I need. And so that's going to now calculate that, and that's going to store that information in another column. And I can go up and I can rename that column, of course. But that's what these tabular do. So they're going to allow you to take your data that you already have and just kind of flatten it and redesign it more for warehouse and reporting and analytics services. And then this gets built, this gets housed on a server, and this becomes a really high-speed way of retrieving and accessing data. So, we talk about kind of bridging that gap between true cubing and analytics and quick data access, and that's where these tabular models come in. So as you're moving through this process, you might make that decision that I don't want to necessarily report against my real live data. You might want to take a look at the analysis services tabular option, and that might give you that kind of to bridge that gap between speed and performance and the complexity of not having to build these cubes. The other step in that would be using reporting services. So, and when we look at Power BI, again, we're talking about interactive visual, and that doesn't mean reporting services can't be visual, but with reporting services, you're going to have much more what we call that paginated data that you might need, where you want to go in and you want to be able to look at large amounts of data. You maybe want to be able to drill through that data. So I might want to look at summary data, and I want to drill into details data. Typically, these reports are going to be a little bit more fine-tuned. They're going to be a little bit more presentable than maybe some of the Power BI stuff, because that's kind of thrown together quickly. So again, we look at reporting services. If I take my same kind of fictitious company, kind of show an example that, hey, for maybe a product report, maybe this is for internal sales, I'm not going to put a catalog in Power BI. So I'm going to use something like reporting services, And again, this is nice because I can host this internally on my own website. And of course, we're doing a demonstration, so it's going to come up nice and slow for us. There we go, it's almost there. And again, Microsoft uses the idea of what they call paginated reports. But this I would look at, maybe this is for an internal customer support. Someone calls us and says, hey, I'm looking at a road bike. I'm looking at this particular model. The customer support can drill in. They can now see that model. They can see what their cost is, maybe what their list price is, what the size, the shipping weight, and again, there's a lot more information that could have been placed here. But this is more what that reporting services model is. So if you need the type of reports that are much more bigger reports, multiple pages, have drill down capabilities, that's where you're going to be looking at reporting services over Power BI and maybe Excel. Okay, and again, not that you have to be a corporate IT individual to write these reports and reporting services, but they are going to be a longer kind of build process. And then the last thing, and we're not going to go deep into this at all, but if you are that advanced analytics person, we still have you covered under Microsoft Stack. We do have data mining tools. We have a client for Excel, and we have a mining and analysis services. And for those who aren't familiar with data mining, that's really the ability to look at predictability. So that's that crystal ball that we wish we would have. But the data mining is what's going to allow us to go in and look at customer demographics and determine, okay, hey, if I go out and I have this type of customer, maybe they're between the age of 30 and 40, let's say they have a median income of $50,000 a year, they own a house, they own 2 cars, they have 1 kid. How likely are they going to be to buy my product? And so based on past sales and the demographics that I have, data mining can help us determine that. You're just slammed by data mining all the time. You go out to Netflix to watch a show, you finish watching that show, and immediately it tells you 5 or 6 other shows you might be interested in. You go to Amazon and you're looking at a bicycle, and immediately you see all this other things that, hey, people who bought this bicycle have also bought this information or this product. Okay, and that product might be a coffee maker. Maybe for some reason people that buy this particular bike always buy coffee makers too. It doesn't matter. That's what mining does for us. So when we get into advanced analytics, that's what we're looking at, is using the tools in analysis services and using that inside of Excel for mining purposes. We also throw in R services. If you're not familiar with R is an analytical package that is now available directly in SQL Server, and it's available inside of Power BI. So if you look at Power BI, one of our visuals there is this nice little R there. And R is basically a data scientist type program application that has been around for quite a while, and the fact that it's now able to use it directly inside of SQL and Power BI is just a huge benefit that we have. So when you really start getting into advanced analytics, R is there, and it can do modeling for us. It can do a lot of graphs and histograms and stuff like that that just wouldn't be as easy to do in any of these other tools. Okay. I know we're getting close to time and I've been talking a lot, but let me kind of wrap things up here for you. With Microsoft, you've got a lot of choices right now. And the 3 primary choices I want to look at from report writing are, again, Excel, Power BI, and reporting services. And the best advice I can give is, again, look at your purpose, look at your need. If I need to use Excel because I want to use pivot tables, I want to quickly change charts, that's where Excel makes a good fit. I can pull data in from a lot of sources, and I can use Excel to manipulate that data. It also is nice if you're familiar with Excel already, you're not learning a new tool. Power BI steps in when, hey, maybe I need that to be a little bit more polished. I want to be able to present it on a website. I want to be able to do some advanced analytics against it. Maybe there's some data sources I can't get in Excel. And I want more interaction. I want to be able to hit a slicer and all of a sudden all my charts change with me. That's where you're going to want to start looking at Power BI. But again, to me, Power BI is that dashboarding tool. It's that tool that I can see my information visually, I see it quick, but I'm probably not going to use it to look at a particular order and drill down into the order details of that one order and go, okay, so that was an anomaly, but now what are the detailed information that I have? That's when I'm going to step into reporting services. I want to build more of these paginated reports, these drill down reports that I can look at. Ultimately, you're probably going to end up with blended solutions in most of your environments. The nice thing about this is a lot of this is already built into solutions that you have in place, so it's not like you're going out and have to buy 3 or 4 different solutions. One Microsoft BI stack will handle all these different tools and allow you to be successful in building a true reporting environment in your organization. Okay, I know I've been talking a lot and have said a lot, but I do want to take a little bit of time. We've got about 10 minutes or a little less than 10 minutes left kind of on our allocated time to open up. If anybody does have any questions, please feel free to ask. You can even, at this point in time, if you wanted to unmute yourself to ask a question, that would be perfectly fine. I do want to show you there is my email address. So if at any point in time you have a question that you might want to ask through email, please feel free to email me. You also, for attending this, if you do sign up for any of our Microsoft classes, if you use a code BI-4-500, we will give you $500 off the price of that class. So please, if there's a class that you need, even if you got a custom class that you want to work with, we'll be happy to do that for you. Okay, I do got a question come in. When will Power BI hosted solution be released? I do not have that information yet. I didn't show this, so I'll go ahead and pop it up. Right now in SQL 2016 reporting services, you do have the ability to place your Power BI desktop reports up inside of reporting services. And then you can also place Excel and everything else in there too. When that will be completely available as a hosted solution where I could, just like running my report, where I can click on that Power BI and see it right here in a hosted environment, I do not have any idea on that yet. I know it does exist. I have worked with a very large client and Microsoft was implementing that for them, but it wasn't released to public yet. So I do expect that to be in the near future. I think it will just be rolled into reporting services. I'm not sure that it's going to be a separate product yet. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Let me put back up my contact information. All right. Well, guys, I will stick around for just a little bit in case anybody does decide there's a question that they have. After this presentation has been recorded, so it will be published on our website. So if you did miss some of it, or if you have someone else that you're like, oh, I wish they would have been able to see this, please send them to our website. And other than that, I thank you guys for attending. And if there's anything we can do for you, please let us know.